This is the Newport Road, stretching from the railway station to the canal for our purposes. In 1880, at the junction with Wharf Road, there was a toll house on the Turnpike Road. It was later demolished, an oak cottage built on the site. Miss Deakin and her brother Zeke occupied the property and took in lodgers. You could also leave your bike there for 2 old pence a week when you travelled on the train. And dentists, Aspin and Kesson, used the upstairs on Mondays and Fridays. These pictures were taken on the field behind Oak Cottage, and we know it was there because the station buildings are in the background. Sports Day was quite an event in the early 1900s. This programme's from 1907. Refreshments were served. You could even get a slice of bread and butter. And this is the programme of events. There was a wheelbarrow race, and they used real wheelbarrows. The young women had their race. They had to run 100 yards down the course, join with a young man, and run back to the winning post arm in arm. And the married women weren't left out. They had to run 50 yards to a table in the middle, turn a shirt, sew on a missing button, drink a cup of coffee, and run back to the starting post. There was a water jump and a tug-of-war, and all the boys had to do was to find their own boots. And you can even have half an hour's dancing for a penny. And the fair came to the field behind the Royal Oak, where the fire station is today. The Royal Oak public house and outbuildings have changed considerably over time. The 1924 map includes a coach house and stables, and also a sales ground. Animal sales were held there in May and September, and they were well attended. This notice from 1934 shows the large number of animals to be sold, and all from Gnosall and district farmers. This is the Royal Oak seen from the railway. The outbuildings highlighted were taken down some time ago. And looking down Newport Road from opposite the railway goods yard. Again, notice the highlighted outbuildings at the Royal Oak. An oak cottage is in the background. Next to the Royal Oak is a fish and chip shop. This is what it looked like before it was modernised. But it used to be the office of John Liversidge, who used the railway sidings or wharf for sales of coal, lime and salt. Notice his telephone number here, Gnosall 7. Then later, he started to sell other fuels and fertilisers. And by 1950, Wheaton Kirby from Newport had bought his business. Outside his office, which is shown in green on this map, Mr. Liversidge had a weighing machine. Across the road was this area used as Wheaton Kirby's coal wharf. And in 1967, a Swinnerton's Garden Centre, which was there for about 25 years. The area is now Stacey's Gardens. Opposite the garden centre and next to Mr. Liversidge's office was a timber yard and sawmill. It was run by Benjamin Stacey and his son Frank. Frank Stacey married Amy Rose, the daughter of the police sergeant Rose. She kept a sweet shop in the high street called Old Stacey's. Frank Stacey and his wife had a tennis court in the field, located about here. And this photograph was taken on the tennis court looking towards the station. The background of this picture shows the wooden workshop indicated with this arrow, and behind it the brick-built office. The office is shown here in blue. It was later used as a cobbler's, then as a newsagent's, before it was taken down to road level. This is what can be seen of it now. Stacey's ran their business from Rose Villa opposite the timber yard. This is the house today, and when it was a police station during the Second World War. These Victorian houses were built just before 1900 by local builder Herbert Lees. This one's called the London Villas, and this one is Sunnyside. which is the nearest one in these pictures. The first property was once a private school run by Rose Yates, the sister of Alfred and Sidney Yates, who ran the two village post offices, and Dora, who taught at the parochial school. Next to Sunnyside in this field, Mrs. Bentley, who lived in the cottage shown here in blue, kept about 2,000 chickens. This was a cottage at the junction with Willie Lane. And showing the garage run by one of her sons, William Bentley. He was well known for tuning engines, and his brother Reg Bentley competed in the Isle of Man TT races. Reg delivered newspapers in the area using a motorbike and sidecar. And this receipt from William Bentley in 1932 and was for 2 bicycles at £4.19 and 6pence each, and 2 bells at £1 each. In 1965, the cottage, garage and field were taken over by Jeff Plant when he set up his transport business at the site. Behind these properties was the railway line, and on the other side was the first sewage works, which was built in 1915. At a cost of nearly £6,000. Back to the Newport Road, and on the opposite side is Willicroft, built about 1902 by Herbert Lees for Dr. Steele. Dr. Steele's first wife was the daughter of the Reverend John Till, but she died in 1897. And in 1902, Dr. Steele married Edith Evans, whose family ran a general store in Newport called the Ark Stores. This wooden building was erected and used as a doll factory. Dr. Steele's wife and her brother formed a partnership making soft toys from these premises. The business was called Stevens Manufacturing Company. The name Stevens derived from the family names of Steele and Evans, though Mr. Evans played very little part in running the business. The soft toys they produced were reputedly of high quality, and the company patented a mechanism in 1916 for a hopping rabbit. After the First World War, the market was flooded with cheap, high-quality mechanical toys from abroad, and the factory closed in the 1920s. A few years later, this building was taken down. This building was used as a warehouse for the doll factory, and then later by Harvey's, the seed merchants from Kidderminster, as a distribution depot, and even later for furniture manufacturing. It's now been demolished. Mr. Poppet sold fruit and vegetables from this shop, and fresh fish every Tuesday. This 1900 map shows the Methodist chapel on the opposite side of the road to where it is today. It was built in 1860 and was known as the Jubilee Chapel. In 1902, a new Methodist church was built opposite, and the original chapel was used as a Sunday school. This picture shows the chapel on the left, and the Sunday school opposite, demolished in 1971. This is the area now occupied by Glendower Close, and this is what the old map would have looked like with Glendower Close overlaid onto it. But in 1880, the site was H. Fowle & Son Brickworks. It started in 1820 and closed in 1920. In 1950, Eric Fowle had a garage located here. He was a motor engineer and ran a taxi service. He later moved to Heath Garage. In earlier times, Percy Stokes was a wheelwright at this location, and he later became a builder. This is when he was a builder in 1936, and was for work done to the police station when it was by the mini island at the bottom of the high street. This picture is looking towards Newport, and the arrow is pointing into Back Lane. The rank is just out of view on the left-hand side. At the start of Back Lane were 2 cottages. This is what it looks like today, and in earlier times. The cottage where the lady is standing has been knocked down. John Malpas lived in the cottage on the extreme left. This Malpas family were wheelwrights and joiners and also undertakers. John Malpas is second from the left on this photograph. His daughter married Andrew Walker, second from the right here. And the family became partners. And later the business became A. Walker and Son, funeral directors. They also ran the hardware shop at the junction of Mill Lane and Newport Road. Samuel Lees lived here. He was a brother of Herbert Lees, who built the London villas. And he was also a builder in the village. This was the draper's shop, run by Miss Husselby, Mrs. Yeomans, then Mary Hayden. This is what it looks like today, and when it was a shop. Next to Miss Husselby's was Coton Post Office. For many years the postmaster and grocer was Sidney Hawley Yates. His brother Alfred was the postmaster of the High Street Post Office. This photograph of his shop window was for King George VI's coronation in 1937. At Christmas time he displayed a notice in his window which read, "Knock knock, who's there? Sidney H. Yates with Christmas fare. Why go to town and spend a crown when half one here will do?" This is Sidney Yates collecting or delivering an order to one of his customers at Broadhill in 1910. The little girl was his daughter Violet. Just round the corner from the post office, on the road to Norbury, was Emily and Alan Jones's fried fish shop, shown here in blue and located at the rear of their house. This is the old Ebenezer Chapel, now converted to a house. The property was used as a hardware store for many years, from 1953, when it was bought by Andrew Walker. It was built in 1823 and was taken over by William Wilder, a farmer from Plardywick, as a meeting room for the Plymouth Brethren. He is buried at the rear of the building with 5 members of his family. There used to be a cottage alongside the chapel at the corner of Mill Lane. Tom Plant, the chimney sweep, Walter Walwyn from Coton Mill, and Fred Rhodes, the baker from the mill, all lived there at some time or other. And this is the location on the corner with Mill Lane. And the view looking from the other side showing the cottage. And this photograph, taken much earlier, shows the house before it was rendered, and the girls are sitting on a large stone put there to stop the wagons hitting the house as they turned into and out of Mill Lane. This is the location of Coton Mill in blue, the shop in green, and the Navigation pub in orange. All of these were built by William Wilder, the farmer from Plardywick, just after the canal was built in the late 1830s. The mill was steam-powered and operated until 1898, grinding flour and animal feed. During building alterations, the end section was demolished, but it was not part of the original mill. The shop was located between the mill and Newport Road, and is the white building with the mill behind. It was known to be rented by Sheaf and Kemp. They were grocers from Stafford in 1896, though there's no indication that they were ever millers. Notice the letters MP from the word Kemp on the wall. And they also had shops at Stone and Church Eaton. Joseph Walwyn bought the premises from the Wilder family in February 1914. Mr. Walwyn had worked for Sheaf and Kemp previously. And this later photograph shows part of the name Walwyn. Notice they had another shop in the High Street in Gnosall. This is one of Walwyn's flour bags. It's said that self-raising flour was invented in Gnosall, but there's no evidence to support the claim. The business passed from Joseph to his son Walter in 1943, and the property was sold in 1978 and became a private residence. Before we leave this area, at the rear of the mill alongside the road to Norbury was this building. It was used as a storeroom by Mr. Walwyn and was where he garaged his car. But in the 1950s was where Wally Hayden ran his printing business from. On the other side of the canal is the Navigation Public House. It was built by William Wilder at the same time as he built the mill and the shop. And on his death in 1865, the pub passed to his daughter Sarah, who sold it 10 years later to the brickmaker Henry Fowle.